And welcome back to CVTV News.
Well, it's Thanksgiving Day, a tradition that goes back to 1677. Most people don't know about it. It was started with the Treaty of the Middle Plantation. This agreement was signed by the royal governor and the chiefs of the Pamunkey and Mattaponi Indian tribes. One of its provisions obliged the Pamunkey and the Mattaponi Indian tribes to pay a tribute to the colonial governor. Of course, we're no longer a colony and the treaty has lapsed, but nonetheless, as a matter of tradition, it's still honored, and the presentation of the treaty's required tribute to the governor has become a Thanksgiving event in Richmond. Originally, the tribute was 20 beaver skins. Today, the tribute is 1 deer from each of the 2 tribes, which is presented to the governor in a formal ceremony. The Mattaponi and Pamunkey tribes are officially recognized by the Commonwealth of Virginia, and both, after considerable effort, have been recognized by the U.S. government. But you've got more Thanksgiving news.
I do indeed. This is, of course, Thanksgiving coming right around the corner. Most of us know that our Thanksgiving tradition in America started with the Pilgrims. Alas, though, most of us really don't know who these people were, save perhaps they wore funny hats with big belts and are often depicted as rigid and dull. That's sad because nothing could be further from the truth. Indeed, it was this band of adventurous and enterprising people who helped define the American character. The Pilgrims, or as they were known in England, the Puritans, had a simple objective in coming to America, one followed by many other people that would come later. They wanted to practice their faith as they saw fit. They couldn't do this in Britain. The Puritan leaders, simply for practicing their faith, were arrested and convicted of crimes against the state. Clearly, for them, it was time to leave England. Their plan was simple: get support from investors, buy 2 seaworthy ships, hire men who could do things they couldn't, like sail the ships, build houses, and organize defenses, and go to the Virginia colony. Making the plan was the easy part. After that, nothing went quite as expected. Instead of 2 ships, they ended up with 1, and it was blown far off course during the Atlantic crossing, leaving them in far off, distant, modern-day Massachusetts. Their famed vessel, the Mayflower, a solid and well-built vessel, nonetheless faced disaster during the Atlantic storm when one of its main beams cracked. However, in a remarkable feat of practical engineering, the Pilgrims used the screw on their printing press, the one they brought along with them, to prop up the beam into place. It was one of the first demonstrations of the American ability to improvise. Of course, one of the greatest contributions to the American experience was the Mayflower Compact. This was a simple agreement to run the new colony using basic democratic principles. John Adams referred to this simple statement as one of the foundation stones of the United States Constitution. Another touch of their genius was in their practical understanding of economics. Their investors wanted the land farmed in common. It probably looked good on paper, but it was an utter and complete failure. This early form of pseudo-socialism prompted what the Pilgrims called the starving time. And of course, their investors got nothing. But in their 3rd year, citing the biblical precept, "That which you sow shall you also reap," they did what they wanted to do in the first place and farmed their own plots. The result was a massive improvement in agricultural productivity. In 1623, after several tough years, the Pilgrims had their first true feast. The colony at long last was a going concern. They invited their friends, the Native American population, with whom they maintained a good-natured working relationship, to join them. That was the basis of our modern holiday. It's a shame that modern interpretations paint the Pilgrims as rigid and not particularly likable, because it just wasn't the case. The Pilgrims, through self-government, enterprise, and faith, demonstrated some of the most impressive traits of the American character.
That's a great story. I always love your tidbits of history, David.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, we're going to break to go to George. What do you have for us in sports, George?
Yeah, George.
Thanks, guys. George Kerns here for CVTV Sports. In college football news, Alabama quarterback Tua Tagovailoa went down in the second quarter 2 minutes before halftime, and they were up 35-7. The extent of the injury is a hip flexor, which he will have to have surgery, and his surgery was successful. He will miss the remainder of the season and will be down for 3 months. They say he will probably start throwing the football in spring. There are critics that say this will hurt Tua's draft stock. Some say they will not take him in the first round of the NFL draft. This also may affect Alabama going forward. Mac Jones will now take over as quarterback, and if they do make the college football draft, how will this affect them going forward? Minnesota lost to Iowa Saturday, and they were the only team in the top 10 to lose, so the college football playoff remains pretty much the same. LSU at 1, Ohio State at 2, Clemson at 3, Georgia 4, Alabama's at 5. Now, Oklahoma pulled off a miraculous comeback against Baylor. They were down 28-3 and come back to win 34-31. In boxing news, Manny Pacquiao says he will return to the ring in 2020. And in NASCAR news, Kyle Busch won his second NASCAR championship and looks to relax in the offseason. In hockey news, the Washington Capitals are 17-3 with 36 points, leading the Metro Division. In NBA news, the Washington Wizards are 4-8, 7 games behind in their division. In NFL news, the Baltimore Ravens continue to roll as they beat Houston and will be at the LA Rams this Monday night on ESPN at 8:20. The Washington Redskins will still continue to struggle in the win column as they lost to the New York Jets 34-17, and the Redskins finally scored a touchdown after 16 quarters scoreless in the end zone. The Patriots are struggling on offense as the defense is carrying the load. New England will host Dallas on Sunday at 4:25 on Fox. Well, that's all the time I have for sports. I'm George Kerns for CVTV Sports. Back to you guys.
Thanks, George.
Well, that's all we have for you this week. It's been our pleasure.
Until next week, be sure to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also watch us streaming at cvtvnetwork.org.
Good night.